Could you keep the house tidy the 1930s way for an entire day? Well, I tried it, with a few modern twists, and here is what happened. And let me tell you, it is tougher than you think. So let's dive right in and I'll talk a little bit about what we're doing and how we got here. The day starts early, at about 6:45 a.m. to be exact. And I am starting to notice a little bit of a pattern with these vintage cleaning routines. They all start early, which is not great news if you're like me and not a morning person. That said, I do actually already have this part covered because my morning routine usually starts at 6:30 a.m. anyway. But let's be clear, that's not because of me. I'm not super motivated or disciplined. It's actually because of my wife. She is a morning person. She's one of those mythical people that just seems to jump out of bed in the morning fully awake. I'm definitely not one of those. But she is also autistic, and having a set routine is really, really important to her. So we've built our morning around that structure, and honestly, it does kind of work for both of us for now. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked because I've already hit a bit of a snag. And don't worry, I'll tell you where I got this routine from in just a moment. But the first hour of the day is dedicated to looking after the baby, and I don't have one of those. But what I do have is a dog. So instead of pretending there's a baby in the house, I'm just going to do what I normally would do and take the dog for a walk and then feed her. And that's, to be fair, exactly what we do pretty much every morning. So at this point, the routine isn't really feeling that different or difficult. Which does bring me to talking about where I found this routine and why I'm trying it out in the first place. I have been experimenting with different cleaning routines for years at this point. And honestly, I've had some success with a mix of the Fly Lady method and the Sidetrack Time Executive method. If you're curious, I have a whole video on those. I'll link some down below for you. But once I discovered how closely connected those routines actually are, I ended up falling down a little bit of a research rabbit hole. Because I wanted to know where all of these ideas of routines and morning routines and cleaning routines came from. And then how they evolved. And of course, what other approaches there were out there to learn. That search led me to a Victorian era household manual, which I tried a modern version of recently, but along the way I also found a treasure trove of beautiful vintage books from across the last 100 years, and I could not help but wonder, what was life really like for homemakers who used them? And more importantly, what can we learn from them today? So here we are diving into the 1930s, and this is the gem of the book I found. It's called let me see if you can see that. The Book of Hints and Wrinkles, which honestly might be one of the most delightful book titles I've ever come across ever. But it's essentially a household manual for anyone managing their own home. And it covers anything from choosing a house to buying and moving, and then to all of the little odd jobs and everyday tasks that keep a home running day to day. And of course, there's a whole section on cleaning and household management, which is what I'm following today. Now, I will be honest, a lot of this book doesn't exactly translate to modern life, but even so, there is so much we can still learn by looking back. And the opening of this book, it had me completely hooked. Let me read you the top part I'm talking about, which does require glasses. Because I'm that old now. The ability to run our house and our daily life smoothly, economically, and with the minimum of worry and fuss is of fundamental importance if we wish to achieve a happy and contented existence. Our home and our family are, and I hope will remain, the twin foundations on which the pattern of our lives is built up. To help you achieve a home that is at once comfortable and cheap to run, and at the same time expresses your individuality, is the object of this book. And that part, it really struck a chord with me, because honestly, it captures what this channel and intentional living in general is all about for me. Our homes might not be the most important things in our lives, but they are the foundation of our lives. They shape how we live, how we work, and how we express ourselves. And when we make intentional choices, even small ones, we're not just making life a little bit easier or more comfortable, we're also creating something that reflects us. A space that feels personal, meaningful, and just ours. Now, that's not to say that this book is perfect. It is far from it. There are plenty of things about the 1930s that I wouldn't want any part of. Honestly, I don't think I'd have done too well 100 years ago, if for no other reason than I have a wife. But just because the world doesn't fully fit with ours today, it doesn't mean that there's nothing valuable to take from it. I think there is still something to learn, something about being more present, more mindful, and just more intentional in how we live. And that is what I am always working towards. A little more intention, a little bit more meaning, just one step at a time. Anyway, let's get back to the routine. And we've hit the cleaning section. Well, after breakfast, of course. It's not actually mentioned here, but I'm going to assume that somewhere in the blur of the morning, food has happened. So 9 a.m. is when cleaning kicks off. And this is where we really start to notice how different the book's approach is compared to modern life. On one hand, cleaning should be easier these days. We've got all kinds of gadgets and appliances to help us out. But on the other hand, most of us are juggling jobs, parenting, errands, and just life. This book, though, it dedicates every single morning to cleaning, like all morning. And that's a major shift from how most of us live now. We still want clean homes, and sometimes we even want spotless ones, but we rarely stop to think about how much time that actually takes to achieve. And let's be real, most of us don't have that time. Now, I am not saying that we should all quit our jobs and become 1930s housekeepers. Personally, I am very grateful for the progress we've made, for the freedom and the opportunities that exist now that just didn't back then. Things like being allowed to have your own bank account. It's really quite recent that women were allowed to have their own bank account or own their own home and things like that. And I imagine that most of us wouldn't want to trade those things in now. But I guess what I am saying is that maybe we need to cut ourselves some slack from time to time. Keeping a home clean takes real time and effort. And most of us are already stretched pretty thin. So if you're not doing everything every day, that's okay. Good enough is genuinely good enough. Anyway, while I've been rambling, you've probably been watching the recommended daily cleaning tasks roll past, and wow, it is a lot. Honestly, it is so much more than I do on a daily basis, and that's saying something because I do have time to clean. Mostly because I've connected my home to my work with this channel, so I cannot do one without the other. But that's very much a niche situation that not everyone has. But at first glance, the routine really doesn't look too bad. It does look doable. But then you scroll down, and then there is another list. Yet there is a second daily checklist. And somehow all of this is supposed to be done in the morning. So let's talk about the things that the book advises you to do every day. And I will be honest, at first glance, it looks like a lot. Because, well, it is. But here's what the book suggests tackling every single morning. For the living rooms, it's open the windows, clean the grate and lay the fire, remove rugs and shake them out, sweep the floor and dust everything. Then the bedrooms. Again, open the windows and make the beds, remove and shake rugs, and sweep and dust, and in some occasions you might have a fire in there too to clean. For the bathroom, it's rinse the bath, polish the taps, clean the floor, and rinse and dry the wash basin. For the kitchen, then it's sweep and mop the floor, clean the sink, and wipe down the hob. For the hallway, stairs and landings, it's shake the rugs, vacuum and dust. And yes, that is every single day. And it really highlights just how much work went into keeping a home running smoothly back then. Things had progressed a little bit from Victorian times. Women weren't really boiling their own soap or scrubbing floors with sand anymore, but this is still an era when household management was a full-time job, especially for women. More privileged households would have had help, live-in maids, housekeepers, maybe even cooks, but even that was changing. The Depression had hit hard, even over in the UK here, and a lot of the aristocratic and upper middle class families were suddenly finding themselves unable to maintain the same number of staff. Big houses were becoming a lot quieter, and for the first time, many women were having to take on more of the work themselves. We also start to see the earliest versions of labour-saving devices creeping in. Things like vacuum cleaners, electric irons, and even some early washing machines. But not everyone could afford them, and certainly not all of them at once. So for a lot of families, cleaning the house still looked like it had done for generations. Now thankfully, things are a little easier today. And just looking at this list, there are a few jobs I can immediately take off the table. For one, we don't have open fires, so there's no grates to clean or fires to lay. And I'm not shaking the rugs outside anymore. We have a vacuum cleaner for that, thankfully. So really, when you strip this routine down for modern life, it looks a little bit more like this. Open the windows for some fresh air. Make the beds. Vacuum the floors throughout the house. Quick dust in the main rooms. a little wipe down of the bathroom and kitchen, sink, taps, hob, that sort of thing. And it's still a lot of work, sure, but it does become a little bit more manageable. And I can see how even just doing that small list most mornings can help a home feel calm and cared for without being overwhelming. We're not done yet. Let's talk a little bit about the fortnightly turnout, because even though I have been cleaning all day, it feels like, we're still not done. The fortnightly turnout is basically the deep cleaning section of the routine. According to the Book of Hints and Wrinkles, this is a 2-week rotation, and this is how it breaks down. Monday is washing and Tuesday is ironing. Wednesday, turn out the living room. Thursday, turn out the bedrooms. Friday is baking day. Saturday is turning out the bathrooms. And then the following week it continues with Monday, washing again. Tuesday, more ironing. Wednesday, turn out the dining room. Thursday, turn out the hall, stairs and landing. Friday is baking day again. And then Saturday is turning out the kitchen. And yes, that is 2 full days a week just for laundry. And I can totally understand why back then. Doing the washing meant hauling buckets of water, heating it on. I mean, these days, laundry is about 10 minutes of actual effort and a couple of machines doing the hard work. I throw a load in, press a few buttons, and it's done. So I definitely don't need 2 days to deal with this anymore. And as for ironing, I gave up ironing years ago. I genuinely don't even know where our iron is. We do have one, but it's mostly used for hobbies like sewing and stuff now. For the most part, we just take our clothes out the dryer as soon as possible and hang them straight away, and because of the heat, they just don't get wrinkled in the first place. But for the turnout days, a turnout is basically a focused deep clean of one area of your home. So let's say it's Wednesday, living room day. A typical turnout might include dusting everything, including skirting boards, picture rails and light fixtures, vacuuming or shaking the rugs thoroughly, and that includes underneath furniture. Fluffing and rotating cushions, maybe even giving a soft furnishings a quick clean or a freshen up. Polishing any wood surfaces, then wiping down switches, handles and high touch spots. And then maybe opening a window, lighting a candle, just to bring a little bit of freshness in. And suddenly this is starting to look familiar again to any of you who have followed the Fly Lady routine or routine similar. This is a lot like the zone cleans, which is a monthly routine on the Fly Lady system where you clean out one zone in your house every week. And the idea is that every 4 or 5 weeks the whole house is getting a good clean. But it is just really interesting to see how similar all of the routines are when you boil down. There's minor changes between them all, but fundamentally everyone seems to offer the same advice. If you're interested, I will add the full routine to the website and pop a link down below in the description so you can try it out for yourselves or just have a look at what it was like. So with the morning cleaning done, and let's be honest, it's quite a lot, the rest of the day of this routine actually starts to slow down a little. Lunch is at midday and then the afternoons are set aside for daily shopping and errands and that sort of thing. And I find that kind of lovely, a rhythm where all of the heavy lifting of the day happens early and the afternoons are lighter and more flexible. Now the idea of daily shopping is such a fascinating window into the time that this book was written. Back in the 1930s, daily shopping wasn't just a preference, it was a necessity. Most homes didn't have fridges and they certainly didn't have freezers. So people had to buy fresh food almost every day. And it wasn't that unusual to pop to the butchers, the baker, the greengrocers, all separate shops to get what you needed just for the day's meals. And then when I was growing up, that had mostly shifted to a weekly shop, where you go to the supermarket once a week, load up the trolley and hope you didn't forget anything. And then now, honestly, I barely leave the house to shop. Groceries just turn up at the door. A few taps on an app and a van appears just like magic. It's one of those little things that really highlights just how much our daily routines have shifted. What used to be a regular part of the afternoon, walking to the shops, chatting to the grocer, planning dinner around what looked good that day, is now just a background task that we automate. Not that I'm complaining, but it does make me appreciate how much time and effort went into the day-to-day running of a home back then, and how much that structure shaped people's lives. So that brings us to the end of this little adventure into a 1930s daily routine, and it has given me a lot to think about. First off, let me give credit where it's due. The homemakers in the 1930s, they worked incredibly hard. The amount of cleaning, organising and hands-on work packed into a single day is really kind of staggering, especially when they were often doing it without the modern conveniences that we appreciate. No washing machines, no dishwashers, no robot vacuums, and in many cases no fridge. They were managing homes that required constant physical effort, and for many people this was expected as part of their full-time role. And when you really look into it, they were doing far more on a daily basis than I do in my own home. And that's not judgment, just a reminder of how much our lives and expectations have changed. It also made me consider why they did so much more. Some of it was necessity, sure, but some of it had to do with social expectation, class, pride in appearance, and just a different kind of structure to daily life. One of the biggest takeaways for me is the emphasis on starting the day early and getting the big tasks done first. This is not the first routine I've tried that prioritizes early mornings, but it's definitely one that's a little bit more intense. Their mornings were packed, and compared to my usual routine, there's a lot more intention and structure built into those first few hours. And that's something I'm definitely going to reflect on. I'm not about to start laying fires or polishing brass taps every morning, but I do like the idea of getting more done in the morning so that the rest of the day feels a bit freer. As always, I am not trying to say we should all be living in the 1930s, but there is value in looking backwards, in seeing what we can borrow, adapt and learn from. Sometimes it's the smallest shifts that make the biggest difference in how we feel in our homes. Thank you so much for watching, and if you tried this routine or any vintage routine, I would love to hear about it in the comments. And if you're curious to try it out, check out the link below to the blog post I've written about the entire routine. Thank you so much for watching. I have a few more of these vintage routines to try, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss those. I will see you next week. I hope you have a lovely day.